Niwern narik dien, wadarang aktanuk, makbari and wadarang bagaruk, manamaith mirabea, nailinga wadarang bake, karingarapo, bunjo the eagle, wa the crow, Kimbani ba Deanne Gilson. Welcome to Wadarang Country.
Live from Wadarang Country, welcome to Lance TV. Coming to you from the palatial new Camp Street Studios in Ballarat, get ready to laugh, think, love and sparkle. And now, it's time to turn that camp dial all the way up to fabulous. Here's your host, the multi-award-winning Lance-tastic, Lance de Boyle.
Darlings, welcome to the show. You're watching Let's TV. I'm Lance de Boyle, and we're coming to you live from Ballarat, the home, the resting place of Bunjil the Eagle here on Wadarang Country. If we've got any First Nations people with us this evening, g'day, how you going? We're about to sit down and have a chat. Come on, Breezy's on the seat, so let's join Breezy. Come on, children. No. Hi, Breezy, how are you today? I'm fine, thank you. Yeah, there we go. Welcome to the show. If you are watching us expecting a footy show, this is not the place for you. But if you're here and to be here with LGBTIQA+ family, then you are my dear friend and in the right place. Earlier today, you've probably seen the news. There was a huge rally here in Ballarat. It was a no more rally. We've had 3 women who have tragically lost their lives, and Ballarat really turned it out today. We had 2 of our crew, the lovely Sophie and the OK Deb, who took some footage and put this together just to let you know what happened in Ballarat this afternoon.
I very much wish that this was a speech that I wasn't making. We are gathering in numbers to recognise the loss of 3 of our sisters, Samantha, Rebecca and Hannah. I can't even begin to imagine the depth of their family's grief, and we are so desperately sorry for what you're going through. We're also marking the names of those suffering that we don't know. And I know I can see Cuthbert's name over there as well. I acknowledge her family. What has happened to these 3 women in our community has shone a light on what women experience in this community every day. Violence towards women happens every day in every community. It happens behind closed doors, inside homes, in workplaces, to women and children, and it leaves scars on every single corner of their lives. It leaves a scar on all of us as well. Over the last few months, our community has seen this violence towards women very much in the national and in the international news, through wonderful lives cut short. Sadly, we know that over that same period, many others in our community have been suffering silently behind closed doors. Where the violence is on our news or happening behind closed doors, we say as a community it has got to stop. It is heartbreaking and disheartening for many of us who've worked in this field before, that after so many reports, after so many deaths, after so many inquiries, that we still have to say in this day and age, without any reservation, that every woman, every child in every home, every workplace, every space should be and must be safe wherever we are.
Women's safety! Now! Women's safety! Now!
And that's what happened in Ballarat this afternoon. It was so very powerful. The voiceover that you heard was Minister Catherine King. We do apologise for the audio. We did what we could this end, so hopefully you could hear what Catherine was saying. We are going to move on with the show by bringing out our lovely guest this evening. Please be upstanding for the wonderful Michael Orchard. Darling! Mwah, mwah. Please,
Lance.
sit down.
Hello,
That's what they
thank you.
call me, darling.
Thank you.
You were at that the rally today, weren't you?
It was extraordinary, as you said, incredibly powerful. People from all walks of life, men there too, thank goodness. Women, all ages, mums, grandparents, grandkids. The stories are just horrendous. Should never happen. And we were talking about this earlier, the whole thing about getting to young men, boys at school, education. Absolutely crucial.
Absolutely, I absolutely agree with you. We speculated that this afternoon it was one of the biggest turnouts that I think Ballarat has seen in recent years, and I would hazard a guess at there was easily 4,000 people there. It took over that whole kind of square area and spilt out onto Camp Street and across. So there were thousands of people there.
Yeah. When I arrived, you couldn't get into the building. There was no way. The police had blocked either end of Camp Street. It was just crowded, absolutely crowded. And there were lots of women with candles, and everyone was listening to the speeches. It wasn't one of those noisy demonstrations. People were just so focused on what has happened. The horror of it.
Absolutely, and from what I learnt from Deb and Soph as well, there was some chanting, but there was mostly kind of this clapping that was kind of happening along the way to draw attention. It was really such a peaceful and gentle show of solidarity for this crazy violence that's happening to women.
I noticed people standing on the sides too, just watching, supporting. No arguments, no comments being thrown at the crowd. People were just there. Okay, they weren't marching, but they were there watching. A lot of people left cafes and restaurants just to watch the march.
Amazing.
It was great.
Yeah. Ballarat is quite a beautiful community, but to see our community, and as you said, it was like it was intergenerational. There was white fellas, there was First Nations, like everyone that could be represented was there this afternoon.
The other thing about Ballarat, of course, it's not a huge community. Most people had someone who knew one of the women or the families. Friends of mine had a daughter who was a friend of Hannah, and Hannah taught at the local primary school. Lots of kids were affected by what happened to her. It's a small community, so people know what's going on. It's not just the families that are affected, but it is the whole community.
Absolutely. Well said. Thank you, Michael. Before we get into talking a great deal with you, we do need to go to our first segment, and then when we come back from that, from the ad break as well, we'll get into having a lovely talk with our wonderful guest, Michael Orchard. So you'll learn all about Michael and why he's on the show. But we are going to go to our first segment of the evening, which is the well-loved and fan favourite. It's the Lance TV Artist Corner, and tonight we are off to TBH Studios again there was a Zine Market on, and it was great. So we'll see you right after this.
It's been amazing down here this morning. So typically people start coming in at around 11 o'clock, and we've had people from 10 a.m. onwards purchasing lovely zines. I think everyone's made a sale at the moment, which is really, really great. So the Zine Market came from, there was a bit of a gap in the market in Ballarat for zines, and we wanted to showcase to the general public what zines can be, to other artists what they can do with their artwork, and it's a cheap, inexpensive way of getting your artwork out there. Well, the
is my first zine fair at Ballarat, so this has been a really great opportunity because I've done a lot of the fairs in Melbourne with the Festival of the Photocopier, so I'm glad that there's a zine community in Ballarat.
So yeah, I'm just doodling away, but also selling zines. Got a bunch of zines about my interests, so cats, lesbians, and fantasy. That's it.
Oh yeah, that would print really dark. Yeah.
Because I want everything in that. So my zines today, unfortunately they have nothing to do with donuts. I have 3 different zines. One talking about some facts about autism. A zine with pictures of my original character Snow J. Storm, and then one with just random facts I knew when I was a kid and teenager.
Hi, my name's Kale and I'm down at the TBH Studio Zine Market today. It's fantastic. It's a beautiful space. I love being surrounded by all the artwork and we've got a great crowd.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of zines. Most of them are collages. There's some that are illustrations. I've got some lino prints as well. I try to go for like a very sort of esoteric and existential vibe. But I've also got plenty of meme and fandom stuff as well because that tickles my brain.
Hi, I'm Mo. I'm otherwise known as Morris Campobasso. This is my zine. Hello. Hi. It's about a guy who is not the best worker, doesn't really jibe with all the people at work, and he gets kicked from one department to another department, and it's very much a comedy, and it's kind of, in some ways, a descent into hell.
So my name's Ive. I've been making zines and comics for about 20 years now. It's a choose your own adventure. So it folds down, and then you can either fold it left or right, depending on which way you want to go, and then it folds again up.
Hi, my name's Alex. I make zines. I've been making them since 2009. I started with this one, and I used it to introduce myself, and it tells the story of a brain surgery that I had when I was 11. And ever since, I've been making zines about cats and sewing and pretty much anything that I'm into that month. They're all like the fairy stories that I'd read as a kid and like when they had a grisly ending or something grisly in them. So that's kind of the vibe of that one.
So my name's Liv and I'm here with Sticky Institute today. Sticky is a shop that's in Melbourne, and we've come to Ballarat with just a selection of zines from the shelf. So it's stuff from around the world. Yeah, we're just trying to showcase zine makers from everywhere.
Sure, so my name's Luke. I'm one of the coordinators of Sticky Institute, and I also run this distro here called Small Zine Volcano. So on this big stall here, we've got the Sticky half over here, which are all zines that have come here straight from the Sticky Institute shop. And these zines are all free zines from Small Zine Volcano, so anyone can take these and take them away. All these ones here come from all over the place as well, and they're all given away for free.
You know, if you're an artist out there and you've been thinking about getting into zines, I would highly recommend it. They're very easy to make. We run workshops down here for them, so if you're unsure, feel free to contact us and we can lead you in the right direction.
Well, that was all pretty interesting. I loved the zine. I love that fold-out one that, you know, if you fold it one way, you could tell one story, but if you folded it the other way.
That's clever.
I thought that was very clever.
Yeah. I didn't get to that market, but it was really well advertised around Ballarat, and there were lots of people who obviously went.
Clearly by the sound in the background.
Yeah, yeah. But also the diversity of the zines, brilliant.
Look at you.
Oh.
No, just think, diversity. No.
I was going to say I'm not much of an artist though. Can't draw.
Don't call me anyway. Just for those who are watching us on Facebook at the moment, if you would like to find us on Facebook at Lens TV Ballarat, if you're watching us from another page on Facey, drop on over, and if you've got a message that you'd like to leave for the lovely Michael throughout the course of the show, pop it in the thread and we will pass it on, as we often do. There's someone's pressed a heart emoji and that's gone flying up, which is quite nice. So I don't know if that was for me or for you, but I'm going to take it.
The zines.
It could have been for the zines. It could have been one for the zines. If it's for the zines, send rapid hearts, and we'll wait for it. And then everyone will sort of like go, anyway.
Right.
So did you find the place okay in the scheme of things?
Given the fact that there were thousands of people in the front of the building, it found it. But it was not that easy.
Yeah, right.
Through the crowd. But also I was way over the other side at one stage, so it took a while to get through the crowd.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a great location here.
Yeah, it is,
in the
isn't
middle
it?
of Ballarat, the CBD.
We've been in a tin shed for the last 6 years. In the backyard, we've been in a tin shed in the backyard of my rental property for the last 6 years. This is like Nirvana.
Many moons ago, I helped move some of the green screens, which are hidden behind a curtain over there. But I missed getting here to the opening, unfortunately. I had something on, which would have been great, because it's
Well, you've got
really
something on
good
now. It's
setup.
called clothes.
You're right. I had more than clothes on that time.
Oh, and a cheeky grin.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's a really good studio.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Also, it's quiet, it's safe, it's peaceful.
Welcome back, Channel 31. You're watching Let's TV. I am Lance de Boyle. Before we went to the break, we've had a lovely little chat with our guests for this evening, the lovely Michael Orchard. Michael, you are you're a much loved member of the Ballarat LGBTIQA+ community here. You and I have met at Rainbow Coffees a number of times.
Many times.
We've had brief kind of passing chats, but you know what I really want to know?
I'm terrified.
Michael Orchard, where were you born?
Oh, I'm an Adelaide boy from way back, long time ago.
What part of Adelaide?
Glenelg, the seafront.
Oh, down
that area.
towards Seaford, but not that far. It's not on the same side as Seaford.
Not that far. Just west of Adelaide.
It's the word that you can say one way but read it.
That's right,
Yeah.
yes.
What's that called?
Something. And you can catch the tram down from Adelaide to Glenelg. That was the original tram line.
Oh, that's...
When they got rid of trams, they kept that one, fortunately.
I lived in Adelaide for a little while too. I know exactly the trams you were talking about were almost more like Melbourne trains, weren't they?
Yeah.
But they were trams.
Yeah, because they weren't in the middle of the road. They had their own tram tracks.
Oh.
Yeah.
So Glenelg, down by the sea.
Hated the beach.
Oh, was it the sand or the water or both?
Both. I like the cold. I like mountains. Hence Ballarat.
Could have moved to Handorf.
Had friends up there, but no, it's too touristy.
Yeah, okay.
Like Dalesford.
Your history is quite interesting in that you come from a long line of Methodist ministers. Talk to us about that.
On my mother's side, grandfather, great-grandfather, great-grandfather, etc. One of them was president of the Methodist, whatever it is, in Adelaide. And because I was brought up a Methodist and didn't really know who I was or what I was, got involved in the church, and through going to a boys' school, Methodist boys' school, I was heading towards becoming a minister. But when I left school, I was too young to go to college to study, and fortunately went to university, because at university I then started doing what we all do at university, questioning one's sexuality.
Look at you. We'll get to that bit.
Yeah.
We will get to that bit. I'm curious though, I am curious, like, you know, it's Catholics, there's Methodist. What is the method in being a Methodist? Or is that just an archaic question that I should never have asked?
Well, you could ask it probably
Ding
the
ding,
wrong
time's
person.
up. No, time's up. No.
Oh, is it? Fine.
If you say so.
No, I mean, Methodists are now uniting, and it's completely different, because when I was a good little Methodist, you know, sexuality was a taboo subject. Methodists weren't meant to drink. My mother used to complain. She'd go to a school function and they had grape juice rather than wine. Yeah, it's completely different now, fortunately. But in those days, it was pretty conservative, very straight-laced, didn't talk about sex at school. Football was the big thing, Adelaide, of course. There's no method, it was just boring.
Yeah, right. The method was boredom. We know you as a celebrant here in Ballarat, but as we will learn as we move through the interview, you've been of service at many levels. What's your first memory of being of service?
Well, I think the first memory was at the school chapel because I was president of the Christian Fellowship at school, prefect in charge of the chapel, and the chapel was used by a lot of community groups. It was a very beautiful 1960s chapel, huge high ceilings, great organ. And one of my friends, Richard, used
It's not the first time you've said that.
That's true. And a friend of mine, Richard, played the church organ. Or
So
the chapel
Dick played the organ?
Yes. What can I say to that?
Keep going, keep going.
Anyway, it was just part of my being at school, being involved in the chapel and supporting whoever was using it. And it was used for a lot of weddings, baptisms, etc. So it was, I guess that started me. And anyway, being brought up a Methodist, you're very conscious of that issue of helping other people, supporting other people. That's very much part of their philosophy.
Amazing.
And that sort of kept going, I guess.
Space jump to your first job at the Hilton Motor Inn.
Yes.
In
yes.
Adelaide.
Yep.
You worked, Tuesdays and Wednesday nights as a night porter.
That's right. Yeah.
Where you spent most of your time studying. What were you studying?
I was studying history. I was at uni. I'd left home, lived in a group household, had no money, got a job as the night porter a couple of nights a week at the Hilton. And then it was great because there was a lovely barman, Bruce, who used to look after me, who was gay, but totally repressed. I'd work for a couple of hours doing cleaning and supporting him with cleaning up the bar, things like that. Then overnight, Adelaide dies. So I had a couple of hours where I could just study my favourite subject, history, which is what I was doing at Adelaide Uni. And I have a particular love in architectural history. So a lot of my work was focusing on Indian architecture, British Raj, Victorian English architecture. So I was able to study for a couple of nights peacefully all by myself. And then, of course, the papers would be delivered and you'd get up and start working again for a couple of hours and you'd go home. And, of course, being young in those days, you'd head off to university on the bike, study all day and keep going.
Amazing. So, yeah.
We all did things like that.
I'm curious because, you think history and you think, the Battle of Trafalgar or... Napoleon or Waterloo, with all of that though, this pinpointing architectural history, I find that really interesting. What is it about architecture?
As a kid, I used to read a lot about archaeology and ancient history and sort of got quite involved in Egyptian architecture and Greek architecture, Roman architecture.
Well,
so
they're all very different. I mean,
very
that's
different.
Egyptian architecture.
So it was all, I just at university, there was no archaeology course at Adelaide Uni, was one at Sydney. I just wallowed in the things I was able to do because the courses in those days were not that well structured as they perhaps might be in other subjects.
What do you think about the Gaudi Cathedral in Barcelona with the flying buttresses?
I haven't been there and I'd love to go there one day. I think it's going to be finished next year. And of course, cathedrals take hundreds of years to build. I mean, look what's happened with Notre Dame. Now they're repairing the whole thing, having that huge fire. But Gaudi's work, not just that cathedral, around Barcelona were just fabulous, colourful, free. They weren't square lines, not straight lines, I mean. Just wonderful building. And certainly the inside is full of light, which is what a cathedral should do. And the Gothic cathedrals, of course, of England, same thing. And Europe, wonderful light.
Have you travelled?
Not to Europe, no.
Yeah, right, where it's kind of would be all happening for you when it comes to architecture.
Yes, it's really funny. I've got friends everywhere else but in Europe.
You need to...
One of those things.
Yeah, you need to Facebook more or something. We need to go for a short break. But when we come back, we're going to have some more chat with the lovely Michael Orchard. And when we come back, we're going to learn more about what happened to you, well, what happened after you finished studying history. We'll see you right after the break in a minute.
Look at that cow.
Yeah. What are you? How dare you? You leave Cheryl alone.
That was an unfortunate timing issue there.
So we don't have any comments, which is good.
Oh, just as well.
Just as well, but it would be good. It would give us something to talk about. But yeah, so I mean, I picked Gaudi specifically because that was the most outrageous building I could think of in the.
It's certainly
but Frank Lloyd Wright, on the other end of the scale, he was very kind of stark and clean and very sort of Spartan in the use of lines, wasn't he?
But also great use of timber and stone.
We're not going to hear because you're not mic'd up, honey. But yeah, but thank you. Hang on. Actually, if you want, you stay there.
Sure.
You stay there. I'll come and sit next to the audience members so you can use my mic. What was your question?
I think the thing that's often forgotten about cathedrals is that they were about light. We see them now, they're covered in dirt and years of smoke and fire, whereas when they're first built, they're very clean and it's all about the light coming through. They're built in a way to accentuate the light of God, as it were. So we confuse dirt with intent, as it were.
Like moths to the flame.
Well, also, glass wasn't around in those days in the sense of everyone's homes. It was very much in the cathedral. And the beautiful stained glass windows, the rose glass windows from some of those cathedrals, the light that streams in, it was about actually walking into the light because you were walking into a place where you were worshipping God.
Isn't there a chapter? Oh, what is that book? It was big in the 60s. Beefcake. What was that book? No, it's not coming. Anyway, there's. It's a Orton, Joe Orton, not Joe Orton. He wrote the book. Anyway, but there's a scene in the book where he's in this church and this light is just bursting through the stained glass.
Yeah,
Gee, I wish I could. No, it's not coming.
But that was the whole thing of going from the.
Welcome back, Channel 31. You are watching Lance TV. Michael, in the first part of the interview, we kind of went down a little bit memory lane with you with regards to being, your upbringing and the flavours and your interest in history. You found yourself going from Adelaide. Now, you went to Canberra via Melbourne to end up in, what were you doing there?
Well, I was studying there initially, and after many years of study, I was over it. And so I joined, as one does in Canberra, the public service. But within a very short time, positions came up in the Australian archives, the National Archives. And so, of course, being somebody who was interested in history, it was a natural progression. And so I worked in Canberra for many years in the archives.
What do you find in the National Archives?
What do you find there?
What things are in the National Archives?
Anything to do with the national government, with the federal government. And also there are a lot of politicians have left their material not to the National Library but to the Australian archives. So people like Whitlam, all his papers, all the things to do with him being the Prime Minister in the Australian archives. Also, they have a huge film collection as well. If you want to find out anything about early Australian history, the Australian archives. That's where it is.
So you would have been as happy as a pig in a pigsty.
Absolutely. And there was this wonderful room full of usually ex-public servants and elderly people who were going through checking security issues because all the papers, a lot of the papers came from defence and foreign affairs, etc. So there was that whole issue of the 30-year rule that you can't release material until after 30 years. And of course, there's a lot of material that is not released after 30 years because it's national security.
Right. So the drafting image of Harold Holt's Japanese submarine is probably in there and it will never be released?
Yeah, never be released.
Yeah.
No, definitely not.
But were you a bit like a kid in a candy shop at that point though? Like history and here I am in Canberra and here I'm just at my fingertips, here is everything.
And one of the more obscure things I worked on was actually setting up the administrative records for lighthouses around Australia.
Oh, back to architecture.
Again, it was great fun. Finding out about lighthouses, most of them not now around, but a lot still are, although most of them have been rebuilt. But it was great fun finding about the people who lived there, what they did, the dramas they had to put up with. It was good.
Yeah, well, I suppose lighthouses at the north end would have a different set of circumstances to those
around Bass Strait, for example, something
end.
like that. Absolutely, yeah.
Wow.
Different climates, completely different.
Yeah. Amazing. So from there though, the National Gallery, I was going to say, National Archives, you found yourself...
in Sydney.
Wow, you fell in love, didn't you?
Yeah, fell in love. That was probably my first big relationship. Moved to Sydney to be with a person. Didn't last that long. Well, it lasted for quite a few years.
How old were you?
Late 20s.
Oh.
And ended up working at the State Archives, which again, great fun. Early colonial records, but also working with government departments now on designing systems, record systems that would then be transferred across the computers. So it was a combination of technology and history.
So the State Archives is kind of, if you were into genealogy,
yes,
that would be a really good place to be.
Yeah. Family history, there are genealogy societies around, but in terms of convict history, family history, it's all in the State Archives in New South Wales, and there's a lot of material there, lots and lots of early records.
Hooray for Botany Bay, I suppose. In the scheme of things.
The exhibition building was burnt down in Sydney. I'm not too sure when it was. I think it was in the 1880s, but a lot of the convict records were in the basement of that building. So a lot of records relating back to families, how they got here in Australia, have gone. But there are still lots and lots of records in the State Archives in New South Wales. And of course, the other states that had convicts too, their archives have a lot of family history material.
Amazing. So from the National Archives to the State Archives, and then you went up to Brisbane and you were at Expo 88. What was the, I remember it, but I wasn't there, but I remember it happening. What was the big to-do about Expo 88? What was that all about?
I think it put Brisbane on the map because people came from all over the world to it. It was only a B-class expo, so it wasn't like one of the big ones in Japan or the one in Canada 4 years before. But there were people from everywhere. There were artists. We brought in artists from all over the world. It was just great fun.
What was your role there?
I was the administration officer for the walkways, which were, you walked around the site, but we had strolling minstrels, comics, singers, groups performing all over the site. And so we brought in people from overseas to actually work with local artists to develop their skills and talent. I think my favourite person was the roller skating opera singer, who was a friend who literally roller skates, dressed as Brunhilde with the big breasts, the sheaf, roller skating around the site. And all she had to do was to sing hello to people, and they were just screaming and shouting and wanting more. Great fun. So we did things like that. There was the serious stuff of the pavilions, but the walkways was all the fun street theatre.
Amazing. That's really a world out of like, we've just come through all this sort of serious history stuff, and then there's kind of almost this moment of flippancy in what was happening, almost.
Yeah.
But
you know, when doors open, you just go, oh yeah, why not?
Oh, well, and that's exactly right. Yeah. My whole life is built on, doors open, why not? From there, you then moved back to Sydney, was it? And got involved with the New South Wales Health?
That's right, yeah. There were a few other things in between.
Oh, of course there was.
I ended up working in Western Sydney in Gay Men's Health, based in Penrith. And of course, in those days, talking about the mid-90s, the gay community was being riddled with AIDS. And so there was a large community of positive people living in the Blue Mountains and a lot of gay people living in Penrith, but a lot of those people were not out.
And just for the people listening, Penrith is kind of on the Blue Mountains side of Sydney?
It's west of Sydney. It's about 50 kilometres out of Sydney.
Yeah.
It's now very much part of Sydney, but in those days, a lot of people moved out of the inner city area because they simply couldn't afford to live there, and so moved either to the Penrith region or into the Blue Mountains. So my role was working with those people, supporting them, helping them, connecting them with the sexual health clinic at Penrith or at the Blue Mountains Hospital in Katoomba. A lot of work with community groups because there were a lot of men who weren't out who were from religious groups, and because they weren't able to have sex or connect with women in that community, they would go to sex on premises venues in the Western Sydney region to have sex. And of course they had no idea about AIDS because AIDS in their mind was a gay disease.
Yeah, I'm just having sex with men,
Yeah,
I'm not gay.
I'm not gay, so I'm not going to get AIDS, or I'm not going to get HIV, I should say. So it was really important to get to them, and that's when we started working very closely with ACON, the AIDS Council of New South Wales, because of course they had a Western Sydney office. They were really concerned about the community and how it could be affected by HIV and AIDS out there. So over the next 20 years, spending a lot of time working with ACON, but also broadening the role into a men's health role, spending a lot more time in schools, the universities in Western Sydney and across the mountains, and just talking to men about health issues generally. Men and health don't necessarily go very well together.
Well, not in Australia. It's kind of like, the bone's sticking out and they're like, it'll be all right.
Exactly. So getting to men and running a program called Men at Work, which was actually working with the gay community, prostate cancer groups, cardio groups, diabetes groups, going into factories, going into the universities, going into places where men congregate, but also finding a lot of women would come to those talks because they were married, they had boys, and they needed to know more about health issues. The big thing, of course, is communication. So actually working with people on communicating issues that they should be aware of and getting them to then talk about it with their families, friends, etc. So it was a very broad role. Started off very focused on the gay community, it broadened out. And it was I just got to know so many wonderful aspects of Western Sydney, which of course is panned by a lot of people. It's not the prettiest place in the world, but there's some wonderful people there. And of course, lots of different communities. So there are lots of multicultural opportunities in Western Sydney. And so someone like me, a male, going into some of those men's groups, be it Punjabi communities or the Islamic communities, and talking to men often gave men the chance to ask questions because they didn't really know who to ask.
Yeah, because it's kind of men's business, not women's business a lot of the time.
Very much so.
Yeah, that's amazing. I can when we were getting the show together tonight, and you mentioned that you were in that role for 20 years. I was in my head going, that must have been such an amazing gig to stay in that job for 20 years.
I had a great female boss who unfortunately I did her funeral some years ago, but we'll talk about that later. But she realised I needed to be challenged more, so she was forever giving me new things to do and managing lots of staff as well, particularly the staff working with school kids and infant kids about health issues, which is what we were talking about, I think, during the Facebook break, that idea of we need to get to young men to talk to them about not just health issues, but the whole issue of respect.
Yeah, what is a man?
Yeah. How they treat other people, women in particular, but treating each other. And so working with some of the educators in the public health unit, getting into schools and actually designing programs to challenge young men, because Western Sydney is not known for its being a really sensitive area in terms of males. And of course you throw in different cultures as well. You're dealing with cultural groups. Quickly, African man, talking to him about the issue of how he should treat his wife, and he said, but I paid 5 camels for her. Then of course they moved to Australia. He was now not working. She was the one who had the job, because a lot of the women refugees, migrants, end up getting jobs quickly in factories, and the men isn't supporting the family, the male isn't supporting the family, creates a lot of issues for men.
Yeah, well, he kind of loses his role and his identity
yes.
because of that.
So
we do need to go for a short
Yes.
break. When we come back, we will have some more very interesting conversations with the lovely Michael Orchard right after this.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Welcome. Hello, Facebook. Toni Louise is in the thread, and Toni asks, what is your favourite building in Ballarat?
Oh, Toni, that's a really hard one.
I've just said that before.
Sorry, Toni. Look, I really like the town hall, but then the BMI, the Mechanics Institute, is spectacular, particularly on the inside.
The Minerva Room.
The Minerva Room. It's, I don't know whether you've been inside of it, Toni, but it's well worth going to visit. And I think you can, during Heritage Week coming up, you can do tours of the Mechanics Institute as well.
Yeah, with Katrina and I can't remember Katrina Hill and.
But
should get Katrina on the show sometime.
Well,
she'd be great.
Heritage Week, you should get someone to come in and talk about Ballarat heritage.
Don't tell me what I should do.
Well, it's just an idea. Oops, sorry. But the other thing, Toni, there's some fantastic houses around Ballarat. You can walk around some of the streets in Ballarat, East Ballarat, around the lake. There's some wonderful old houses that people come to Ballarat, forget about the housing. They look at Sturt Street and Lydiard Street and Armstrong Street, but further out, there are some wonderful buildings as well.
Lots of little miners' cottages.
Yes.
And then, then you've got those like Webster Street, the top end of Webster Street there,
wonderful.
with these beautiful kind of palatial looking
Victorian
places.
mansions.
Yeah.
And Edwardian mansions. But also there are a lot of 30s, 40s modern style houses around Ballarat, but you've got to find them. There's a great one in Eureka Street. There's a lovely one in Sturt Street, up the end of Sturt Street near there.
I love it. It's as though you've just been kind of, I'm going to take myself for a walk around this block just to look at the houses.
Oh, I do. And I take pictures, and I'm sure people in the houses sort of go, why is that person taking pictures of my house? But anyway, I used to put them up on Facebook. I've been out of that habit lately. But it's a great city for architecture.
So yeah, there you go.
So I'm sorry I probably didn't really answer your question, Toni.
What do you think of the talking modernity? What do you think of the new
government
building? Welcome back, Channel 31. You're watching Let's TV. We are in the third part of a three-part interview with the lovely Michael Orchard. You've been very giving. Thank you so much for just your openness and really sharing these parts of yourself with us. We have had a jolly old journey with you. But
I have moved around a lot.
You've been out running people, no, but you have moved around a lot, which is great, and it's all part of the Michael Orchard adventure. You've moved to Ballarat, and you went, that has been such a wild ride. I'm going to stop in Ballarat, and now I'm going to become a celebrant.
It wasn't.
Tell it. How did that? Why? I mean,
why?
Why not?
How? Why not? It started in the 90s. When 3 of my friends died of AIDS. I got to know the celebrant, who was an ex-Catholic priest, who said to me, I think after the second eulogy that I'd done, he said, you should be doing this. Well, it took me about 20 years, but I was then working for health. My sister died, my mother died, I organised their funerals, I did their eulogies. And it just all made sense after my mother died to really think seriously about it. That was in 2016. So I inquired as to how do you become a celebrant? There are various TAFE courses, but there are lots of a few private colleges who actually run the course. It takes normally about a year. You have a couple of weekends where you meet up, the rest of it's online. People forget that it's a very legal situation.
Absolutely.
Particularly for weddings,
is it kind of an RTO, sort of TAFE, sort of
absolutely,
TAFE-esque sort of?
It's a Cert 4, but you can, as I said, you can do it online. There are about 14, I think there were 13 modules, but some of those modules are quite easy, and things to do with developing a business plan or a marketing plan or the legal side. You also have to film a whole lot of different scenarios, particularly weddings. You actually have to get a whole lot of friends, people involved.
And role play it.
And role play them. You've got to design the wedding and actually get people to act the parts. So I was lucky in my street in the Blue Mountains. I had a whole lot of good neighbours and good friends who used to love the parties afterwards, I think. So they'd go through the mock weddings. So I did that for a year, and then part of that, of course, is studying to be a funeral celebrant. And then I realised after that year, and this is the time of moving to Ballarat, no, it was time to actually become a celebrant. What I found though was that weddings are incredibly complex. Bridezillas do exist, and you can have two bridezillas now, and they can be men too. And then you have families involved, and they can drag on for like 1.5 years to 2 years. And there's a legal aspect to weddings, which is not easy. And so I just decided, after doing a whole lot of, funnily enough, same-sex weddings, mostly friends, and just a few straight ones, that no, going back to wanting to be a Methodist minister, I actually was interested in doing funerals. So I did a special course to become a funeral celebrant and came here and knocked on a few doors of funeral homes and said, this is who I am, this is what I've done, and have been working with one fairly regularly. It's not quite as busy at the moment. People are still dying, but they're not having funerals now, partly because of cost, but also a lot of people know that it's not a legal requirement to have a funeral. So families are just having gatherings. They don't need a celebrant.
So just, if I heard that right, so you did a celebrant course, but then you doubled back so you could specialise in being a funeral celebrant.
Yes.
Yeah, right. How much extra training was that?
That was only just basically a long weekend, because you'd done a lot of the work anyway through the celebrants course. But you learn, you're dealing with people. It's a service to people. It's great. It's an incredible sense of achievement when you're supporting people going through a time of grief. A lot of people have no idea how to organise a funeral. They need support in that. They don't know how to talk about death. They need support in that. They often don't know, they're often not able to be open about the person who's died. They're so protective of that person, but then other families are really open. It's a very mixed bag of families you deal with, or friends you deal with. But you meet the most wonderful people, and that's certainly helped me settle into Ballarat, because I've met so many people through doing funerals, both for the families of the person who's died or friends, but also the people who attend those funerals.
I remember there was a moment months ago where I think I invited you to be on the show.
That's
and you
right.
like, I sent you this message on Facebook, and Michael replied, I've got a funeral. And I replied, I'm so sorry for your loss. And your reply was, no, I'm a celebrant. I was actually delivering I was doing the funeral. I was like, and that's where I went, wow, like this would make for a really interesting interview and learn a little bit about what it is, because we know celebrant, but we, to consider that, you can actually just have somebody who's a funeral celebrant in the same way that you can have somebody who's just a wedding celebrant.
Yeah. I mean, I also do things like naming ceremonies, I do commitment ceremonies, because a lot of people don't want to get married for all sorts of reasons about marriage, but they want to make a statement to their community, so they do a commitment ceremony. So they're great fun. They're really good fun because they're not legal in any way. But the thing about a funeral is you spend time with the family trying to get to know what they want, but also find out about the person who's died. And it's not about what they did this year and then what they did and where they moved and the houses they had, etc. It's partly that, but it's actually about who were they? What were their values? What did they like? How did they deal with people? So you can actually really get to know people who've died very well. And sometimes I've said to people, I wish I'd got to know your grandmother, your brother, because they just sound wonderful people. The other thing about a funeral though, it's not all roses. You need to actually show that the person was human and that they had failures as well, or failings as well. And that's a hard one to deal with. You've got to be careful there.
We're kind of all in that yin and yang of where there's light, there's darkness, and where there's darkness, there's light. Speaking of which, Michael, we've arrived at the end of the interview. I would like to give you this wonderful Tiny Pride bag just for you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Take that shopping with you.
I will.
And we also have this wonderful framed photo of me saying, I was on Let's TV.
So that's going into a private place.
Oh, yes.
In my office where
just
people
take
come
it
and
with
talk
you every
to me.
time you do one of your
Yes,
funeral
yes,
sales.
I
Just
should.
take that with you, and people
I
go,
will.
"Who's that?" It's
I
all
will.
right. It's my lucky angel.
Angel.
There you go.
Interesting.
Hey, settle down. We do need to go for another break. Michael, thank you so much for sharing all of that. When we come back, we will be in the last throws, particularly if you're wanting to watch Bent TV. It's not too long. We'll see you in a minute. We hope you enjoyed our interview with the lovely Michael Orchard. If you'd like to find out more, you can find Michael on Facebook at michael.orchard142. Lance TV will be back right after this. We're on Facebook now. Rick Youssef. So much I didn't know about you, Michael. How long have you known Rick for?
I met Rick probably a year or two after I moved down here.
Yeah.
5.5 years ago.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. He's become a very good friend. Indeed, we're gym buddies.
Oh, that's why you know Josh.
Yeah. We go to the
at
gym.
Iron Oak.
Yeah. And Rick, of course, set up the coffee group. And when I'd sort of got my house organised and put in a garden, because I'm a bit of a gardener.
What are you growing?
I have 7 fruit trees. I've got vegetable gardens. I've got exotics. I've got natives.
Stunning. Anyway, back to coffees and
coffee. So I thought I need to get to know the community, and somehow or other came across Rick, called him, we chatted, went to coffee, met some lovely people like Cheryl, who of course works here.
Oh yeah, okay.
Oh, she just did a bird, but anyway.
It was digital communication.
Exactly. And have got to know a whole lot of people through coffee. Some wonderful people indeed.
Amazing.
Yeah. I'm not an absolute regular. I don't get there every week because of my work, but you see people in the street, you go out and do things with them away from coffee. It's a very supportive community here, very supportive. And I'm actually quite surprised at how big the LGBTQIA plus community is here in Ballarat.
Well, the City of Ballarat say that there's 114,000 residents here, and about 10% of those identify as being somewhere on the LGBTIQA. So that's like 11,000 people here in Ballarat.
It doesn't surprise me at all, because you go to places and you meet people who you don't see at coffee or the other activities that happen. There's uncoordinated queers. You've got one of the guys is now setting up a men's only walking group, as in hiking group. People who come along to those things, you never see them anywhere else. A lot of them are working. A lot of them live out of Ballarat or travel out of Ballarat during the week. It's a really busy place here.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. I mean, like we talk about these groups and everything starting, and that again is that whole, welcome back to Lance TV. Now it's time for All Over the Shop. Geelong Pride Film Festival has its opening night this week. Rainbow Shorts is on the 18th of April at the Village Cinemas in Geelong. And Bren Luke and Thomas Jackson are having a wonderful exhibition at 319 Smith Street, Fitzroy. Bren Luke is a wonderful visual artist. 21st of April, The Great Clothes Swap Part 2 at the Repair Cafe version, Radius Art over there in Hepburn Springs, 21st of April. On the 27th of April, there is the Grand Tour and the launch party at 45 downstairs, and that event goes from 2 till 4. The 27th of April, Dr. Rob versus the Ozco at Theatreworks down there in Melbourne. That starts at noon. There's a lovely picture of Dr. Rob there wishing everybody to get well. 27th of April, also there is a pub sing, Pride number 3, Born This Way, at the Tap Room at the Shed Shaker Brewing, and that's at Castlemaine, part of Castlemaine Pride. The 4th of May, the Great Trentham Spudfest is on, 2024 is on at Trentham, Victoria, the 4th and 5th of May. There is queer karaoke happening at JD's Bar and Lounge here in Ballarat. That's on the 24th of May, starting from, I think that says 8:30. The Festival of Australian Queer Theatre is on its way. Time's getting closer. 22nd to the 25th of August. You can go to the website faqt.au. 14th of November is the Bacchus Marsh Strawberry and Cherry Festival on the main street of Bacchus Marsh there. That starts at 5 o'clock on the 14th of November. And of course, I'm still looking for support for my mullet with the Black Dog Institute. So if you've got a couple of quid, just head over there, find me and make a donation and help people get some research into mental health. That photo is the photo that you've got in your frame.
It's a great photo.
Hey, as a celebrant, you must have some wacky stories. Have you got a commitment ceremony story or?
Well, yes, I do actually. It was quite recently. A couple didn't want a big gathering. However, it was his 50th coming up. So what they decided to do was get married on the Monday before the Saturday night. Registry office, parents only. And so the 50th birthday actually became a full commitment ceremony, which is like a wedding, the rings, the vows, the lot. But at the very end of it, I was able to say, and by the way, they got married on Monday. The crowd went wild because unfortunately it was after dinner and they'd all had a lot to drink. So it was a very raucous party from then on.
The timing was perfect.
It was perfect. And you can do that, but weddings don't have to be serious either. Weddings can be fun. And certainly...
and what about, like, we do that. Do you happen to have a humorous funeral moment?
Well, humorous, it's probably a really lovely story rather than humorous. Dealing with a beautiful woman whose husband died. They met in a pub near Kew Gardens in England when they were both working there and studying. And there was a particular piece of jazz music, and I'm sorry, but I can't remember what it was, that they danced to when they first met. So the two daughters asked me, having spoken to them and their mother about the father and got lots of information about this wonderful man, could they actually play that song at the end of the funeral rather than a maudlin song? It was just, it was a 50s, it might have been a 30s jazz song. But they said, better still, do you think we could dance to it? Now, I just assumed, okay, the family will get up and dance, because in the particular funeral home, there's a huge area where people could dance. And I thought I'd have to go down through the crowd and drag people up. Well, I announced what was going to happen at the end of the service. The music started, and probably about 200 people got up and started dancing.
Oh, how beautiful.
Which was so beautiful because that was such a memorable thing for the woman whose husband had died.
Yeah.
And it's almost as though people wanted to keep dancing when the music stopped. So Ian on the music put it back on again, and so people still kept dancing. It was just a lovely way to celebrate a man's life, because a funeral should be a celebration. And I'm sure you've all been to funerals where, particularly religious ones, where it's almost as though the person's hardly ever mentioned. So what you do as a funeral celebrant is actually try and get to know the person and actually make it about them. And really create something that's fun. And that people laugh as well as cry.
I went to a couple of funerals. I went to one last year who was the daughter of the man who died the year before.
Oh, that's hard.
And both of them were performers, well-known theatrical types around Ballarat. Yep. And I found it really interesting to be at a funeral where, you know, as the funeral went, the whole room would stand and start just applauding. It was, and tears, and it was quite beautiful. You are quite beautiful too, Michael. Thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure.
I've really appreciated your view on the world. Thank you for joining us tonight too. I'd like to thank our special person in the audience who had a little bit to say in the Facebook moments. But we will see you next week with a whole new show. And take care. Thanks for tuning in. And remember, be kind.
Thanks for watching Lance TV. We'll be back same time next week. Lance TV is made possible through funding from the Community Broadcasting Foundation. I'm voiceover guy Randall Smith. See you next time.